You're going to love the story. Again, I'm Keisha Breaker, and here is Pineapple Butthole. This is for Austin. It was June of 1989, and I was 11 years old. My best friend Anna and I were at her house playing Legos, and she has this substantial Lego collection. And it is a big cardboard filled to the top with everything that Lego made. We designed impressive house floor plans, complete with furniture and decor. And we designed an we made a grocery store and a movie theater and even a highway. My fingers would hurt from the hours of snapping little tiny pieces together. We made our Lego town come alive at night by using Hot Wheels and micro machines, and we would pick our own imaginary boyfriends. And there was always a tense debate over who would have Bret Michaels, the singer of Poison. Yeah. Okay, so it was definitely some Lego sex happening too. Really good stuff. I am telling you, our Legoland was lit. Okay? It was not uncommon for us to walk to the gas station in front of our neighborhood, and it was a solid 30-minute walk, a solid 30-minute trek in the heat. No cute water bottles, no cell phones, and no cool sunglasses. Just us and busting our ass in the sweat and sweating it all out. Nothing but a heavy pocket full of change that was freshly stolen out of our parents' nightstand. It was noon, and sugar was on the mind. And nothing would have been able to stop me, not even the stifling 100-degree heat and humidity of Houston. Now, this walk was going to suck, but it was going to be worth it. The norm was for us to get a king-size Snickers, a vanilla cream soda, and some lemon heads. And then I would examine the candy bin, the 25-cent candy bin. Well, this day I found a box filled with little plastic fruits. Now imagine it. There was this yellow plastic banana with a green screw top. Its contents: sweet and sour sugar, powder flavored candy banana, which made me want to gag. Now, who eats candy bananas? Lame, right? Lame? Okay, I'm sorry. Lame. So, there was a strawberry and a grape one, and then there was this pineapple that really caught my eye. How exotic was that? Anna, she got the strawberry, but I felt like I had selected the coolest candy yet. And with confidence, I walked it to the counter. We stayed at the convenience store long enough to cool off and chug our sodas and then start down the 10 long blocks back home. This was summertime and nobody, and I mean nobody, was paying attention to me at home. My mom, well, she worked the night shift and my dad worked during the day. Did I bathe? Who knows? I mean, my body soaked humidity enveloped both of us, but the sugar powered us through, and we got it through the oven-like atmosphere. Then I noticed something. At first it was faint, and then the intensity just started to rise quickly. It was an itch in my butt. And not just like my butt cheeks, and not even on like the crack, but my butt hole. Now, I was increased to a fiery, bring you to your knees kind of an itch, and it had no choice but to scratch it. I mean, skin on skin, kind of scratch it and like be a little direct and aggressive, and I just needed to really go to town. So, yeah, my fingernails needed to be employed, and it was so intense. I know. I kind of let Anna go in front of me and checked around and made sure no cars were coming by, and then I just like went to town. And then I just had this relief. You probably could have heard the scratching going on. It was that bad. But then I was just like over it, and I let out a shudder and just like felt so much better. Now for some lemon heads. So we got back home, and I started back into Legoland right away. None of that silly hand washing business. So we splayed our candy out everywhere. And I was rearranging my tiny cars and updating my Lego people's lives. And Anna was like, hey, you want to try my powdered fruit? And I'm thinking, sure. So immediately we exchanged candies. Of course, I didn't want to not offer her mine. And somehow, in a way, I naively convinced myself that she would not smell my ass on my candy. So we switched, right? And then I'm holding on to her strawberry, and she's got my pineapple, and we sat in silence, and we opened up the little parts, and we put the open hole of plastic container to our lips, and then we started to sample each other's candy. So good. And then Anna stopped eating hers. And she pulled it away from her lips. She smelled it. Her eyes looked at me. Brett, you've been digging in your butt. A whole second passed and it felt like an hour. And I was like, no. I exclaimed in my defense, obvious lie. I even think I looked around behind me as if somebody else was in the room. Who, me? So it was a fail. Anna grabbed my hand and she looked at me and she says, don't worry, it's okay. I know that smell. I've had it before. I narrowly escaped the humiliation, but this felt like true friendship. It took me 3 years for me to write about this story, and I wasn't sure if I would even put my name on it. I knew it always made my very close friends laugh. I'm confident in my decision now, because I want you all to sit there in your chair, and I want you to take a deep breath in, and I want you to exhale and let it out. And I want you to turn and look directly into the eyes of the person sitting next to you and ask them, have you seriously not smelled your own ass before? Thank you.
All right, keep it going for Keisha and Brittany. That was
Amazing. All right, just a little bit of housekeeping before we keep the show going. This is totally on us. We should have said this earlier. For readers, we were told specific instructions about mic placement and how to move the mic and when not to move the mic and where to be. So readers, when you come up, you can move this mic. You can't move that mic. You can't move this, and you have to be close to the mic. So just zoom, get as close as you can so everybody at home can hear you and everybody here can hear you. Moving on. Look, like we said, we were asked to do this last year, and boy howdy, did we have a production plan.
Oh my gosh, cameos, dance numbers, we had it all. Who did we have?
Oh, this was March of 2020. We had all the hits. We had Tom Hanks.
Oh yeah.
We had the entire NBA.
Yes.
Marianne Williamson was going to sage the room.
Oh. And Andrew Yang was going to be here and help us with the dance number.
Everyone wanted our endorsement.
Oh.
We were on fire back then. And then, well, things happened and...
Time has passed. Those people have turned from yeses to maybes to no's to don't call me's.
So, while we wanted to do some stuff that we had planned, we have to acknowledge that we're facing time constraints and massive budget constraints this year. So just imagine, we're going to walk you through this.
We're going to still do it. Show must go on. The show's still going to happen. So we had a big dance number. Here, we're going to, here, I think you're in this position.
Okay.
I'm like kind of like right here. in this position. And imagine, so like most of the NBA is kind of between us. There's a lot of dancers, and we all kind of have the same choreography. There was supposed to be an orchestra that has since expired. So there's not going to be really any music, but we're still going to do the dance number if that's cool with you guys, okay?
All right, you ready?
Yeah.
Here we go.
1, 2, 3, 4. And then I pick up Andrew Yang and I toss him.
And I catch Andrew Yang and I put him down.
And 2, 3, big finish. Snakes.
It would have made a huge impact.
Eyebrows would have been raised.
But it would not have made as much of an impact as your next story tonight, which is How's Waldo, written by Aaron Rodgers and read by Kathleen Gilliam.
Hi, my name is Kathleen Gilliam, and I'm going to be reading How's Waldo by Aaron Rodgers. Ooh, wait. Okay.
Don't move it.
Okay, yes, that's like that's much better. All right. Can I move it like this? Okay. All right. On a Saturday morning, I suddenly had a burning, insatiable need to be anywhere and everywhere else immediately. When I couldn't stand it anymore, I burst out of my bedroom, where I'd been listening to records. Fortunately, my mom knew what was going on and what to do. Unfortunately, she knew this in the way that an arsonist might know how to put out a fire. "I know what's happening here," she said in a voice inherited from my grandma, who used that same tone when she'd figured out the twist in a Hercule Poirot episode. "You're having a panic attack." I was 8. I'd never heard of a panic attack, but I was glad that the pain had a name, and glad that, at least in this way, I wasn't special. Other people had been here often enough to name it. So she got me a glass of water, and I crawled into the armchair with my dad while he distracted me with books. I shook my hands and feet, the way that I still do, as if anxiety could be converted to energy and expelled through movement. I doubt it was the first book that we tried, but at some point we settled on Where's Waldo? Waldo provided just the right amount of mental effort. And after a while, I noticed that my brain was no longer trying to flee my body. Shortly thereafter, I was sent to my first therapist. I hated her, and the way she spoke to me through metaphors and euphemisms. I was sensitive, but I wasn't delicate or stupid. I knew the basic vocabulary of mental illness. In an attempt to comfort me, she mentioned that I wasn't the only person from my school who came to see her. Of course, she couldn't tell me who the other patients were, so I'd spend time at school looking around, wondering, who else here was crazy? On my second or third visit, she made me play a card game, obviously intended to get kids to open up. Even then, it felt passive-aggressive. Why couldn't she just ask me questions and listen to the answers? Why cajole me with melodramatic children having their feelings in primary colors? If she couldn't take me seriously, then whoever would? The final straw came when I drew a card that said, "Tell the other player something you don't like about them." I told her I didn't like her dress. I didn't want to, but I didn't like her dress. But so fucking what? I didn't go back after that, or if I did, it wasn't for very long. I still remember her dress. Black, shapeless, unremarkable, unless remarks were solicited. I still feel betrayed. I learned to keep my feelings in, so they wouldn't make me go. Nobody asked real questions, and so I didn't have to think about real answers. Sometimes a feeling leaked out, but the question why that followed it always felt more like an accusation than an invitation. Around that time, I read a story about two friends who got in a fight, and they built fences around their garden so that they could set proper boundaries so that they could maintain their friendship. I resolved to never build a fence around my garden, not realizing I already lived in a tower with no windows. But it takes more tools than a third grader has to keep panic in. Regular anxiety, fine. Depression, fine. You can just pull those into yourselves and just let them burn up in the furnace in your chest. But panic wants out of your fingers, out of your eyes, out of every nerve ending. And I was just minding my own business when it began to rise up again, demanding power. So I ended up back in the chair with my dad, looking for Waldo. Waldo got harder and harder to find as he disappeared into progressively more claustrophobic situations, surrounded by more and more distracted, self-absorbed characters. Regardless, he stood there calmly, ready for anything, not even trying to hide in his recognizable getup. Waldo stood by as the pyramids rose up around him. Gluttonous revelers partied en masse, never stopping to ask who he was or how he felt about anything. At least they didn't ask him what he didn't like about them. Maybe he'd say, well, I've been at this party for hours, and you've just now noticed that I'm here. I don't like that very much. Or, I don't know you well enough to know what I don't like about you yet. He didn't seem to mind that nobody asked him those questions, though. I was in my early 20s before I learned to occasionally shove the panic attacks into the furnace with my other feelings. My mom convinced me to see a psychiatrist, and the psychiatrist convinced me not to see my mom. I moved on from Waldo and found other methods of coping and distraction. Some healthy, others not. These days, my panic attacks lie dormant, and it's been long enough that I've started the archaeological process of digging through my own ruins. Why did I settle here in the first place? And what tools did I use to live in this landscape? Do I still need them? Wedged between my dad and the arm of the lazy boy, Waldo's brand of stoicism appealed to me. Smiling, friendly, dissociated. He stood out visually, but he was never inconvenient, just happy to be there, a tangential participant. He fit in everywhere, even if he belonged nowhere. Sometimes people wondered where he was, which must have meant he mattered. Now I just wish he demanded we ask him more than just where. Thank you.
Karen, wow, what a fantastic story. Hey, I'm looking around this audience right now, and I can tell you guys are chock full of fantastic stories. If you've got a story you want to submit to Grown Up Storytime, you can submit that at grownupstorytime@gmail.com. As Emily mentioned before, whether it's finished, ready to go, or whether you need some work, they're going to work with you on it. They're always looking for stories, so please submit. All right, your next story coming up to the stage is El Nino, written by Claire McClonis and read by Katie Manning.
I was fed a bill of lies that there would be snakes up here. Oh, I can't adjust this? Oh boy. Okay, can y'all hear me okay, even though it's not quite in my face? Okay, cool. All right. From the spelling of some of the words in this, I assume the person who wrote it is British or English, and I'm not going to read this to you in my Adele accent because it's really bad. But sorry to that person if I butcher the way you would have said it. El Nino made landfall in the cold late winter of my 6th grade year. We were released early from school one fateful day due to persistent heavy rains and potential flooding and mudslides in the surrounding area. Luckily that day, the transit bus arrived relatively on time. The winding roads along the rocky cliffs were all the more treacherous to navigate in a teetering city bus and in the pouring rain. As I rounded the corner of my street, I barely managed... Oh, hold on 1 second. See, when you practice, I guess things get out of order. Hold on one moment. So sorry. Does anybody want to talk about QR codes? Hold on. I'm so sorry, y'all. You ever just get nervous and skip an entire paragraph of the page that's in order? Welcome back to Gust Live. And I feel like I have an excuse because I'm an adolescent therapist, so the last story made me feel very attacked. Okay, so starting on the last sentence you heard, the winding roads along the rocky cliffs were all the more treacherous to navigate in a teetering city bus and in the pouring rain. When the bus made it to our stop at last, my friends and I exited quickly. We had walked halfway to one of my friend's house when the rain began to beat down harder than I had ever experienced before. Hey guys, I think I'm going to turn around and head home, I announced to no one. My friends had already broken into a jogging pace. I don't want to get stuck at your house in the flood, I called after them. From my distance, I could barely make out their distracted response as I began to run home in the opposite direction. Page 2. As I rounded the corner of my street, I barely managed to grab a hold of the stop sign as residual water from the steep hills above gushed around me, knocking my feet out from underneath me. As I climbed onto my porch, there wasn't an inch of me that was dry. My backpack and the school books inside it were drenched. Contrary to the term latchkey kid, I did not have a key to our rental house. This was by no means the fault of my mother, who had given me a key earlier that year, the likes of which I had irresponsibly lost and chose not to inform her of. I had been using the front porch window as my entry route, which we left slightly ajar for our cats to use freely. Like a stray cat, I would squeeze my lanky, bony frame through it on a weekly basis. Only today was different. Due to the storm, my mom had closed it and locked the window from the inside. After exhausting all of their possibilities of potentially unlocked windows around the outside of the house, I slumped against the front door for 5 minutes of deliberation. Looking up to the window, which I normally used as my door, I could see our roommate's one-eyed cat, thoughtfully named Kitty, lazily cleaning his paws as he sat on the inside ledge. "Stop taunting me, jerk!" I yelled in frustration. I finally decided to venture across the rapids to my neighbor's house on the other side of the street. This was a house I had visited many times before as a younger child. A boy, a few years my senior, lived there part-time since his parents' divorce. This was the home of his father, Mr. Bear. I hurried up the slippery stucco steps and knocked loudly repeatedly on the front door. It did not take long before Mr. Bear opened the door with a startled look on his face. "Oh, hi there, Claire. It's been a while since you've paid us a visit," he began. "Michael's at his mom's house until the weekend, so you may just want to check in with him then." He paused to have a look at me. I looked exactly like something our cat would have dragged inside. Hi. I looked down at my sopping wet Converse high tops, which were now caked in mud and debris. See, I've actually locked myself out of my house, and I was wondering if I could just stay here for a bit until my mom gets home from work, I asked pitifully. "Well, of course, Claire," he exclaimed. "Here, let me get you a towel, and you can take your shoes off here on the front step." And he hurried to fetch me the towel. Mr. Bear led me down the hall, handed me a stack of his son's fresh, clean clothes, and a plastic shopping bag for my soggy attire. "You go ahead and clean up and change in the bathroom." He pointed down a hall to the door on the left. Once inside the bathroom, I quickly made sure the door was locked properly. I didn't quite feel comfortable enough in this man's house to take a proper shower, so I went about washing my hands and face in the sink with their Dove liquid soap and drying my hair with a towel which he'd already given me. Unsure of which step really came next in this scenario, I studied the pile of new clothes. His socks looked brand new, bleached white with 2 blue and yellow stripes at the top of each cuff. The seam at the toe was a dark green. I concluded that these were, indeed, the best quality of socks I had ever witnessed up close. I peeled my own sopping socks off my prune, frigid feet. Even before wading through several blocks of floodwater, my socks had been old, stained, and worn out at the heels. They were definitely worse for wear now, yet certainly not trash in my mother's opinion of the word. With my mom in mind, I wrung out my socks onto the heaped bath towel, folded them properly, and tossed them into the plastic bag. I then pulled on the new socks, and which smelled of fresh detergent. Oh my God, I squealed in my mind. The sensation was likened to wearing 2 nimbus clouds on one's feet. I took a step. The ball and heels of each sock were padded so that it felt as though I were walking on new sponges. What are these, 6,000 thread count? The science of socks was suddenly my new favorite subject. I quickly removed my underpants, wrung them out, stowed them in the bag as well. Perhaps to someone else, wearing a tween boy neighbor's underwear might be considered disgusting. I thought about what my friends would think of me if they knew about it. No one would have approved, save for one, my closest friend at the time. I would be sure to only tell her, really, if anyone. I inspected the boy briefs carefully. They were spotless, brilliantly white, and also smelled of fresh detergent. The waistband of the briefs had 3 alternating red and blue stripes, and being a child of the 80s, I couldn't pass on an opportunity to match my underwear with my socks. And so, on they went. Whoa, I may have mumbled aloud. They were securing, protective, similar to the matching socks, amply padded. I fiddled with the front pocket, brainstorming items I could potentially store inside of it, until I realized which item was normally stored inside of it. I paused. Whatever, I decided. They're already on me now. Next came the light gray sweatpants, and again, their fleecy inner lining made me feel as though I were wearing a blanket as pants. They were nothing like my thin pajama bottoms or jeans, which caused me to resort to wearing long johns beneath them in the winter. The t-shirt was quite large for me, and from what I recall had a dare to keep kids off drugs slogan on the front and the back of it. I wouldn't have been caught dead wearing that shirt at school. Luckily, to cover it, Michael's dad had given me a matching hooded sweatshirt. I hung the wet towel over the top of the shower rod and gathered my shopping bag of belongings. When I emerged from the bathroom, I felt like the coziest version of the Michelin Man one could imagine. Mr. Bear had prepared an afternoon snack for me, which sat waiting on the coffee table. He gestured for me to come have a seat on the couch to eat. My snack included a thick grilled cheese sandwich, a bowl of hearty chicken noodle soup, and a Welch's juice box. Holy crap, this is what this kid gets to come home to every afternoon? I mused to myself. This isn't a snack, this is a full-course dinner. To this day, I would disagree that snacks can be cooked food. When you're done eating, don't forget to call your mom and leave a message telling her where you are, Mr. Bear reminded me as he left the wireless phone by my plate. I thought about forgetting to leave a message and having to sleep on their exceedingly luxurious couch for the night. But then I thought about how that might upset Mr. Bear, so I made sure to leave a decipherable message on our home answering machine. Hours later, when my mother finally returned home from work and the rushing street water had subsided substantially, she came to collect me. I hugged Mr. Bear goodbye, much to his surprise, and my mom and I headed out into the chilly nighttime. She laughed hysterically when I told her of my acquired undergarments. I can't believe you're actually wearing them, she cackled in amusement. She forced me to return the sweatsuit and socks after the next laundry cycle and before I stained them, and I objected every step of the way. Bleach was something that my mother never used, as it was an added expense, like fabric softener and dryer sheets. I thanked Mr. Bear again and reluctantly returned the outfit at the end of the following week, save for one item. For me, those tween boy breaks were a sensory introduction to the comforting world of the middle class and masculinity. To me, they were a symbol and a reminder of how the majority of male students in my elementary school felt on a daily average. Safe, secure, and comfortable. The thick padding on their butts insulated them from the elements of the whole wide world like a diaper.
All right, folks, we're going to keep this Snake Diaspora Day 10-year anniversary show going with this large production. Folks, we had a full pageant play planned
Oh yeah.
for this.
We again, like we said, we had a lot of celebrity cameos.
But for contractual reasons, we can't say who was going to be in this. But I can say it rhymes with Saul Miyamati. But he's not here with us today, so unfortunately, we're going to have to be playing all of the roles.
Yeah, he's doing a show that we won't say, but it rhymes with millions. So this is the Snake Diaspora Day pageant. Hundreds and hundreds of years ago, the country of Ireland was home to many, many snakes. There were all kinds.
Big snakes,
Little snakes,
sexy snakes,
ugly snakes,
fugly snakes,
cyber snakes,
rogue snakes,
shaker snakes,
baker snakes,
jock snakes.
nerd snakes.
All snakes lived there in peace. But Ireland also was the host to rich natural resources of religious artifacts that the Pope wanted to himself.
So he called his royal foot soldier, Patrick Carts.
Oi, Patrick! There's too many snakes in Ireland, and I can't get my artifact. You gotta go to Ireland, you gotta get rid of all the snakes, and then I'll make you a saint.
Hi, sir, I got this.
So Patrick traveled to Ireland and drove all the snakes out of their home so the Pope could have his precious Book of Kells or something.
Get out of here, you legless lizards.
Oh, Patrick, you did it. You're a saint now.
Oh my god, I did it. Next step, Evan.
This is the story modern America wants you to know. All in the name of Irish pride. But no one asked the question, where did the snakes go? The answer? Anywhere but home.
So, this March 17th, let's take a moment to think about the snakes of the world, doomed to a fate of constantly slithering in search for a forever home.
And we had Sarah McLachlan playing that song.
Yeah,
Live.
in the arms of a snake.
It's an old song. All right. Your next story is going to be Unspoken, written by BPPB and read by Sarah Pandey.
Unspoken by BPPB. White, red, white, white, black, green, red, 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 red. Colors of cars passing by me, no make, no model was unseen. As a white Subaru drove by, I thought, go straight, with a black crossover crossing my path. My tires screeched and I thought, turn right! Over and over for hours, always making decisions not by my own volition, but by the pattern that was building around me, telling me, forcing me into an array of nonsensical decisions. My white mid-sized CRV haphazardly navigating the suburban streets, my impulses now replacing the guidance of a GPS, frantically trying to keep up with the last-second deviations. Abruptly, the tires stopped. Exiting the car, I walked into a field of power lines, cracks of dry soil underneath my feet, believing that my destination had been found. I undress. A shoe here, a shirt there, an old worn baseball cap thrown stripped down. I find myself standing half naked, staring at the early summer sky, chin up, throat tense, screaming till my lungs emptied. What else do you want me to do? I've done it all! With the sun set, my girlfriend would find me walking barefoot down the sidewalk, shirtless and unsure. Our dogs, once with me in the car, are now gone. The white all-wheel drive 2016 Chariot is now missing. The car would be found later, doors wide open, keys in the ignition, No Scrubs by TLC booming on repeat. The dogs were found. They were on their way home, and I found a bed in Sunshine Mental Hospital 24 hours later. The average onset of bipolar is 25. I was 29. Those hospitalized days, they weren't so bad. I was still manic, living in imagination. The padded cell can be a wonderland, for there's just so much promise of delusion. It's the come down. It's when you realize what you've done and you're faced with the utterly unimaginable possibility of your own psychology. That's when the medication begins. The psychiatrist prescribed me a life of 2-week pharmaceutical trial and error. Each medication sampled, then shelved and replaced. Lamotrigine, 50 milligrams. Abilify, 10 milligrams for 2 weeks. Latuda, 80 milligrams for 3 weeks, because my doctor was out of town for 1 week. With every stop and start, assurance was lost. Was my mind actually mine? It slowed down to a crawl, with blips of residual activity left to remind me of what I was and what I was not. And what was the theory of treating bipolar disorder medicinally? Simply put, you stop the mind. Then you stop the man. Then you just hope that the soul remains. Resveratrol, 4 milligrams, and I couldn't care. 24 hours in a day, and I just slept through all of them. I was dial-up medicated trying to operate in a world where everyone was using 5G. This went on for months of disappointing the women that I loved by ending up in bed when she arrived, never leaving until she left. Day after day, where my once quick reactions now crawled at a snail's pace. 6 months after the hospital, and Thanksgiving had arrived, we flew to Vegas, then entered Zion National Park in our RV, complete with fire-roasted turkey, powdered mashed potatoes, and grocery store wine. There were moments on the trip that I remember with a hint of joy. The time my girlfriend held my infant nephew warmly in her arms. Reaching the cliff peak on a trail with my sister, watching my oldest nephew jump and skip, his caffeinated blonde curls bouncing under the shade of an oak. Looking back, these memories feel soft, sweet, yet in the moment, my mind's dullness had forbidden their enjoyment. In contrast, the drive back to Vegas was just as vibrant looking backwards and as it was looking forward. Driving down Highway 15 with the daylight setting, my girlfriend began to sing. She always claimed to be a country girl, though her Louis Vuitton compulsion would leave most strangers second-guessing with some innocuous word like orange. The slight country accent would come out, and I love that accent. It was cute juxtaposed to her Bengali skin. Her accent was now continuous as she drove in to Take Me Home Country Roads by John Denver, and my eyes began to water. As they wandered from the road to her for the first time since the mania under the power lines, I cried from joy instead of despair. With the RV returned, my mind began to relish in its own revival. Perhaps there was a light at the end of the tunnel. We landed in Vegas on the Strip for a night of dining, imbibing, and those 1,000 threaded sheets undone with a do not disturb sign on the door hung. In an hour, we found ourselves in our honeymoon bath for two, and everything was wonderful. In an hour, yes. I'm going to go downstairs and play a little blackjack before dinner. She was enjoying the bath, and we had talked about me doing a little gambling while there. Dinner was at 7:30. The first bet I laid was at 6:18. Blackjack! Called the dealer. Everything was wonderful. It was 7:07 when I was up 1,000 and dinner was approaching. Let's buy whatever we want! I proudly greeted her at the table. My answers were short, and my conversation ability was confiscated by an aged addiction years behind. If her singing was the light exposing a medicinal darkness, then gambling would become a noose. delusionally nodded by justifications of self-help. As we finished dinner, I gave her a kiss, promised her I would see her soon, and I left. And as I stepped into the room, it was 4 a.m. My pockets were full of receipts, credit cards were fully advanced, and the accounts were empty. Crawling into bed ashamed but thankful to avoid the questions I fear lay in her head, laying down, I was fully awake. Everything was not wonderful, and we broke up 8 days later. Upon losing her, a hunger remained, and Houston's poker houses were pleased to see me fed. Climbing blind with bets increasing, wins and losses, mostly losses, and mornings always lost to nights. Business owners, professional poker players, and well-off retirees trying to escape retirement. And myself, trying to bluff my way into the night's nightly 9-player band while avoiding the clinging of the bell that would soon cling to me. When the house of cards crashed, my home was in foreclosure. My love, she was lost, and my sanity began leaving me speechless. Not metaphorically, but strictly physically. With friends and colleagues, strangers, or family, I physically struggled to speak. Questions were met with long, awkward pauses, delays, and eventual stutterances. Quite often, it was the best I could do to shrug and answer with some non-committal, non-verbal, non-starter. Hey, that's what happens when you smoke too much weed, I heard from behind my desk, or less than nuanced suggestion that I should smile more because I seemed mad. Drowning in debt, house being foreclosed, the most basic of human connection, and agony, I turned to what seemed like the only resolution. Uber. 9 to 5, I was just your normal PhD holding professional. From 7 to 12, I was a driver with an inflated insurance premium, patiently picking up passengers at hobby. I drove, I picked up, I drove, I dropped off, over and over, ride after ride. Gradually, and without premeditation, the conversations of hey and hey grew. This place, this reinforced haven on 4 wheels, became a safe zone. The organized capitalist social structure of I'm the driver and you're the passenger felt nurturing. There are only so many types of conversations that could be had with some hesitation. The occasional, how are you doing, would exit my tongue. Followed abruptly with a quick, that's good. Of course, let's not enter an actual human encounter. Remember, I'm the driver. Inside the sheltered, there's water, no tip required, existence, my vocabulary began to flourish and the passengers were surely pleased with my progress. Unfortunately, it was in the real world of unlimited liabilities with small talk, unscripted and uncertain, that I flunked. The realization that this may be forever reality was beginning to feel real. Maybe I truly broke myself. Sitting down from 7 to 12 and meandering through the scripted rides had gotten me only so far. I needed to shock the system. A move to force my mind, to force my mouth, to force me to speak even when scared. I decided to stand up and try some self-inflicted exposure therapy. It's a Wednesday, and a crowd of 4 or 5 remain, depending on how we count the one leaning over the second chair. It's his first and will probably be his last, the MC, pandering for laughs, welcomed me onto the stage. It is 1 a.m. and I had 5 minutes. I used to be a fat kid growing up. I was never obese, but I was no athlete. I opened with only minor stuttering. That all changed when I went to college. You see, my college had everything. The courtyard, the larger-than-me stadium, and athletic center, a beauty of a gym, everything you need to lose those 5 or 50 pounds. Beads of sweat began to descend, drip, drip, they dropped to the floor. I paused. Suddenly, the room of functioning midweek alcoholics felt suffocating. and you know, every day that I headed to the gym, walking with conviction down the collegiate main road across the sidewalk towards the building and into my coke dealer's dorm. I knew I was on the way to a healthier me. 3 people chuckled. The majority of the room, if you're counting. The remaining 4 minutes were a practice in observational deafness. With the singing cricket silence and the last call around the corner, I sat down to watch the last acts perform. Clearly, the audience was not permanently disabled as laughter returned to their breaths. Erasing the last 7 jokes I told and focusing on the one that could be called a joke, I was delighted. The night was not a classical success, but for me, well, this was a win. I told that same joke at 5 more open mics, always desperately delighted by the non-dismissal amounts of laughs, and always shifting to bed for the rest. With some time, I gradually learned how to speak again, away from the safety of the front seat and the fire and brimstone of the center stage. I would love to tell you that this was the moment when everything got better. But there would be 6 more hospital stays over the next 2 years in 2 continents, and 1 medical helicopter sent to check on the foreigner bellowing, "Que sera, sera," in front of a mosque in Amsterdam. 1% of Americans are diagnosed with bipolar. That's 3.3 million men, women, and children. Each one has their own story. The story of that first year. Diagnosis that changed their life, the inevitable challenges, and hopefully with me, a year that came to provide meaningful context for everything that came before. This was my story. This was my first year.
Keep it going for Carl. So, I just want to thank you all again for coming out tonight. Everybody here really appreciates it. I know Emily and Blair definitely appreciate it. But hey, if to follow up on what Ned said about submitting a story, or if you want to know more about any workshops I might do or upcoming events, why don't you go ahead and pull out your phones, unless they're still on airplane mode, and go to Instagram and follow them at grownupstorytime, all one word. And while you're there, go to YouTube if you haven't already, and go ahead and follow them. Follow the QR code, the technology we all slept on. We all had egg on our face. No one thought it would take off. Here we are. So we're going to go ahead and and one more thing. Go ahead and tip your bartenders tonight. Times are hard for everybody. I understand that. But if you can afford to go out, you can afford to tip. So please do that tonight. Now, going on to our next story. It is an informal sequel written by Emily J. Hines and read by Mara McGee.
I am writing this story in a state of physical distress. Some backstory. Due to some health concerns, my husband and I have not had sex in about a month. It's okay, these things happen, but things have resolved and I know that sexy time is upon us soon. I begin to mentally and physically prepare myself, not in the sense that I need to mentally prepare myself in a bad way, but just like get excited and prepped. Also, I don't shave my vagina, but I do keep it trimmed for 2 reasons. Number 1, because during my period, it helps keep things from getting messy. And number 2, as a courtesy to my husband during oral sex. Okay, so today, partly because I knew we were going to have sex, and partly because it was just time given the rate of hair growth, I was in the bathroom trimming my pubic hair with scissors, gently manipulating my area with my hands to get different angles, when I felt a sensation on my clitoris that I had never felt before. It wasn't a pain per se, but it felt like fire. It was more than a sting, it was a sear. And while it wasn't spreading, it was escalating. It was a familiar feeling, but I couldn't place it. My mind raced. What had I done? What chemical had I come in contact with? Had I touched bleach recently? Maybe vinegar? Do we keep acid in the house? Was I burning my clit to oblivion with acid? The situation was not abating. The sear was becoming very intense, and while I wouldn't describe it as pain, it was incredibly uncomfortable and distracting, and I knew that if I couldn't get it under control, I would be in serious trouble. It was definitely ramping up, and vigorously. My heart rate quickened, and I could feel panic start to take its grip. That's when something clicked. I don't know what I remembered first. The fact that my friend Ryan's story about getting hot sauce in his girlfriend's badge, or the fact that I had somewhat recently handled a jalapeno pepper due to some mustard seeds I'm pickling. But then, finally, a path forward. I knew what I had to do, and I had to do it quickly because this situation was getting out of hand. In Ryan's story, he mentioned using cool water, white vinegar, and a little portable fan, and also that the sensation did eventually subside after some time. I didn't have any white vinegar, or a little portable fan, or van. But this gave me hope because maybe it was just a little residue I could get off, and also that it was not a lethal condition. Other people have survived. I jumped in the shower, literally dancing and writhing in discomfort, and immediately discovered that hot water would not do. It would not do at all. It made everything worse. And crying now, I reduced the temperature and washed my hands vigorously 4 times, counting to 40 each time because I was not about to reinfect myself. After multiple soapings of my clitoral area, honestly, I lost count, the feeling began to subside. The relief, yes, the physical relief, but also the relief that I would not have to go to the ER for clitoral capsaicin exposure washed over me. The feeling isn't totally gone, but it has reached a much more acceptable level. Today, I will be wearing very loose pants. And needless to say, my husband and I will probably not be breaking our dry spell until tomorrow. Today, I learned a lesson that I hope sticks with me for the rest of my life, that hand washing is not an activity to be taken lightly. It must be done diligently, mindfully, and with proper care, or there can and will be consequences that can and will derail your plans for the day, sexual or otherwise. Thank you.
All right, keep it going. So what do we got next? Oh, there we go. All right, so we've been doing the Snake Diaspora thing all night. I'm sure all of you are like, this thing rules. I want to get in on it.
I get it. I love it.
Wow. So I'm sure you're wondering, how do I celebrate?
Yeah, what do you do to celebrate Snake Diaspora Day? You can't just go out and buy a little rubber snake. That's not going to do it, right?
What are you, half-assing it? Come on.
Come on.
You got to hiss at your friends.
Yeah.
You got to dance like this. And just like St. Patrick's Day, you got to wear green. A very specific green. This green, actually. In fact, your safest bet is to buy one of these shirts after the show tonight. And we'll be back there.
We'll be selling those shirts as well as the effing pager. That's right. That's our zine.
That's right. We made a zine about if you want to start streaming or create your own show on Twitch, we can show you how to do it for free.
Hey, not
but
bad.
you gotta buy the zine. All right, we're up on our last story tonight.
Right.
Ned, why don't you go ahead and introduce them?
All right, our final story of the night, Neighborhood Watch 4, is written by Brendan Borkshield and read by Matt Graham.
So, I was in a death cult. When I was 5. I won't bore you with the details. But it's important for setting up this story that you know the broad strokes. So this was the Woodlands, Texas. In the 90s? When the town actually looked like its name, a land full of woods. I and the other 5-year-olds on my cul-de-sac would hang out in the woods near our houses and build forts and make potions out of mud and juice. And as we all know, potion making is a gateway to cults. In our case, that gateway opened when one day I asked, "Hey, what are we making all these potions for?" And Bianca, our default leader, and a quick improviser said, "So I can die." I've wanted to die since I was born. And we were like, okay. Cool. And then the potion making sort of broadened out into a larger game called Helping Bianca Die. Okay, let me be super clear. She didn't actually want to die. The first time we got hold of a knife, she poked her hand with it and was like, "Ow! Let's play something else." But she liked the drama of it, and so did we. Our parents, on the other hand, were less excited about the game. Once they saw that we'd gotten hold of a knife, they started asking all these questions. Just kind of like micromanaging like Death Cult. And we were like, "Geez, can you give us some space? We're 5. So in order to get our parents off our backs, we went into the woods together and cast a magical force field. Our hope was that the force field would keep the adults out of the woods. So just to recap, cast the adult banishing spell, hoped it works, then we get back into being little mini Manson family in the woods. Now none of that is the main focus of this story. It's just important context. So one day I'm at the house of one of my fellow death cult members. And I get bored and decide to walk home. And when my mom sees me coming through the front door, she's like, "Did you just walk home by yourself?" And I'm like, "Yeah." And she's like, "You're 5. You can't walk home by yourself. Next time, get an adult to walk you home." And I say, "Fine. Whatever." Now, in hindsight, I'm pretty sure when my mom said get an adult to walk you home, she meant get an adult that you know to walk you home.
But I didn't intuit that important bit of subtext. So the next time, I'm at my friend's house, I get bored, death cult, decide to go home, walk out the front door, and remember, I'm supposed to get an adult. But instead of going back inside and bothering my friend's parents, I just flag down the first random man I see on the street. I'm like, hey, excuse me, my mom says I need an adult to walk me home. Can you help me out? And the random man on the street is like, I just grab his hand like, great. Thanks, let's go. Now a bit more context. This was an embarrassingly white neighborhood. I lived in, it's just like a mayonnaise factory in a blizzard. And this random man I stopped was black, which meant, because while I obviously can never know what it's like for a black man to walk through a white neighborhood, what I've gleaned from what the media tells me is not necessarily a fun time. So imagine you're this black man walking through the mayonnaise blizzard white suburb, and then a white child runs up to you, grabs your hand, demands you walk him home. In that moment you might think, is this a test? Because if I say yes, and then the cops stop me, I don't think they're going to buy it when I say he made me hold his hand. But if I say no, I'm just releasing him into the custody of whatever misadventure he finds next. And this kid seems easily stupid enough to get himself killed. And when that happens, who's to say that it doesn't come back on me? So, there were really no good choices for this man, but before he could decide what was the lesser of two evils, I made the choice for him. I grabbed his hand and started leading him toward my house like, come on, I'm late for VR Troopers. For the record, I'm pretty sure I was leading him in the opposite direction of where he had been going. So now 5-year-old me has sort of ushered this man into a weird socially engineered kidnapping where the kid does the napping. We walk in silence for a minute. I'm leading us toward my house when I hear some of my friends playing in the woods nearby. And I think, wait, before we go home, I should show this guy our fort, right? So without saying a word, I changed course and started leading this man toward the woods. And as we get closer to the tree line, I hear my friends running through the brush and screaming at the top of their lungs. There's such a cacophony of screams coming from the trees that it's almost like the forest itself is shrieking at our approach. Now, I know my friends were screaming playfully, in the ghoulish and bone-chilling way that only 5-year-old warlocks can. So all I heard was fun in progress. But I see in hindsight how it may have sounded different to my new walking buddy. And even if he fully understood that these were play screams, he wouldn't have been unreasonable to worry that certain other people in this neighborhood might view the situation a little differently. We got to the threshold of where the cul-de-sac meets the woods, and I say, come on. Come see our fort. And the man says firmly and unequivocally, nope. Sorry, no, can't do it. I'll walk you home, but that's it. I'm not going in there. Of course, now we have a better idea of why he was hesitant. But at the time, what I thought was, oh my God, the force field. Our magical force field! The one we made to keep the adults out of the woods! It works! We're magic for real! We're magic for real! Everybody!
We're magic for real!
We're
Magic for real!
We're
Magic for real!
We're magic for real! We're magic for real! We're magic for real! Yeah. We have proof. And then I didn't care so much about showing him the fort. I just wanted to go home and do spells. So I rushed him back to my driveway. And this is where I should have said, "Thank you for walking me home. Sorry I'm trying to make you go in the shrieking forest." But what I said was, you know, I have powers. And I don't remember what he said, but what he might have thought was, "Kid, you have no idea how true that is." And if you're out there, a random stranger who walked me home that day, let me take this chance to say thank you, and I'm sorry, and if I ever have any forest witches of my own, I'll teach them to do better. Thanks.
All right, keep it going from that. Keep it going for all the readers and all the writers tonight. So, we're finally at the end of the show. We want to thank you all for coming out and participating. And hey, what's up? Oh my God, Ned!
What?
I just got our My 23andMe result.
Oh my God, the test that we both spit in?
Yeah! It turns out we're 100% unequivocally Irish. Oh!
Looks like greed's back on the menu, boys! Back